it's Brighton, that one. Yeah.
Mods versus the Rockers.
Yeah.
They were the first photographs that I bought, actually. I was down on Brighton Beach, my mum and dad sunbathing on the Pebble Beach, you know, and as a young teen, the last thing you want to do is just sit around with your mum and dad all day. So my mum had just recently got a little point and shoot digital camera, so I just walked around the town photographing, and then from there I bought my first 2 images on that same trip. I had photographs of the riots of the Mods and Rockers in the 1960s. But then from that point I left it alone for a couple of years, and it wasn't until we were asked in sixth form to take an extra lesson. And originally I chose drama, which, you know, is completely out of what I'm like. I'm not that type of person. But then I turned up to the class, I was the only one, and they said, well, you can't take this by yourself. So the next option would be photography, and I had a few friends that were in that class as well, but as soon as I took that class, and the teachers in that class really, they liked the work I was producing. I mean, looking back at it now, I wouldn't dare show it to anyone, but that pushed me to take it further, and so then I went into university and really found my passion for it. It's not necessarily looking for a single photograph, it's more looking for a story in an area than a single image. And that can be seen in some of the work that I've done based around Medway. It's the story of the people within the landscape. It's something that I find is quite important. The Devil Won't Take Me That Way was as much as a portrait of the person, but also of his environment. Medway is the main focus at the moment, but I definitely want to branch out, and so I've done that with other work, looking at the seaside or travelling to Japan and trying to focus on Japanese baseball players, which is a project in the making. Well, most of the people I take portraits of are actually the people closest to me, so friends, family, or friends of friends. But when I first started, I couldn't ask people for portraits. I found that more people were interested in say, the camera that I had, or asking for a cigarette or something. They interacted with me before I found the interaction to then go and photograph them. You know, going up to someone and putting a camera in their face, it's quite intruding, you know. You're getting into their space, and so it's nice to speak to the person and get them comfortable around a camera and yourself, because otherwise you won't get the same interaction that you would have having not spoke to them. Documentary would be where I class my photography at the moment. The storytelling is not necessarily me creating the story, but it's me telling the story that already exists, that people haven't seen or haven't noticed. You know, these photographs will have some importance. It might seem at the moment they're just a corner shop down the road that you might go and get your milk from. But in 10-20 years, when that corner shop doesn't exist anymore, these photographs are going to hold a lot of nostalgia to the people around here. I photographed pheasant shooters for 3 months of the season during the winter, and that was a story that I went out of my way to go and document. And one of the portraits of Tom holding the shotgun, you know, he's got an innocent look in his eyes, a rugged face, rugged hair, but holding this weapon that kills. The series of work that I'm most proud of is probably Blue Mud and Chalk. It was a project that I undertook after university and after a long time away from Medway. So photographing in Thanet was a large portion of being at university. And so having that breakaway meant that I come back with sort of a fresh eye on the Medway towns, and felt it was underrepresented and something that I should probably pursue. So it started off that I was just photographing the area, no project in mind, but as you build a bigger body of work and an archive of the area, you start to see a relationship between the images. And you're photographing a scene or photographing a person, you're not distracted by keep looking at the image that's on your camera like you would be with digital. film you can just be in the same area and space without being somewhere else. It gives me time away from the images, so I can take the photograph, and most of the time I won't go and get them processed until the next week or the next month. And having that space away from the subjects and that work, not only have I had time to think about it differently, but then I've also have the time to view the images in a different way. Sometimes you don't realise that you've got a good portrait. You might take that photo, scan it in, you look back through your archive a year later and find, wow, this is something really compelling. So the image I took in Notre Dame, there was a big ceremony happening in the middle of the square outside. That was a great image, but it wasn't really until the fire happened that it resonated. The main goal for me would be that my work would be at the local archives in Strood. That is the biggest goal, is that they'll be kept and looked after and looked at again. That's the whole reason for creating work like this. And books are so important because you never throw away a book. You might not necessarily keep it forever. You might buy it, put it in a charity shop and get rid of it that way, but they never necessarily just get binned. And so having your work in books, that would be the biggest goal for me, is just to keep creating books and let the photography live on.